Hi class, today I'm going to make a slab built cup, or at least like two different ways to make one, and then we will make a handle at another point, but let's just get the cup made. You really can't put handles on these at the very, until it gets a little more set up. So I'm going to start out with a lump of clay. It's probably way more than I need. I know that I need to make a slab about this big, and you'll see why. I always start by roughly, I chop it off the block of clay with the wire instead of digging it off with your hands, and it's just a little more even. And I get it flattened out with the palm of my hand. Roughly, it's going to be like, 3/4 of an inch thick, which is way thicker than you want it to be. All right, and then I'll take my rolling pin. Now the larger the rolling pin, the better here. But if you have a smaller rolling pin, it'll, as long as it's at least, as wide as you need it to be. And I always start from the middle out, like that. And you'll find that once you've gone over it one time, it's not going to get any bigger. So you have to release it from the canvas like that. And then you'll do that again. From the middle, out, middle, back. If you start off here and end here, you have thin, thin, and thick in the middle. So now I can already tell that this is quite a bit more clay than I need. So I'm just going to trim this down. You don't want a bunch of extra clay if you don't need it. And then this won't get extra dry. I can put this right back in my bag and it won't dry out. Always keep your clay covered up. All right, so now that is way too thick for your cup. The recommended thickness here is going to be at least 1/4 or less. And what I'm using here is some sticks that maybe you have around your house. Here's a paint mixing paddle that you could get at a hardware store or a paint store, and here's a yardstick. They aren't the same thickness, but they're close enough. It's going to be helpful to have something to stop it from being too thin and keeping the thickness kind of consistent. So I'm going to start in the middle, and I can push a little harder now because I have those sticks that are going to be there to help me prevent it from getting too thin. Again, you see how it's gotten. I'm just going to cut off those two ends. And I'm going to flip it over this time. And I'll do this again. So you have to do this on canvas. If you do this on a smooth surface, it's gonna stick like crazy. So this isn't too bad of a thickness. Cut that away. That's not a bad thickness for your cup right there. So that's the thickness of this paint. So if you can get to a hardware store, you'll give you these even if you don't buy any paint. You just ask them for a couple stir sticks and they'll give them to you, I'm sure. Alright, so now there's my slab that I'm going to make the cup from. I'll take a rib and I'm going to go over this surface to get rid of that canvas. I'll just do it multiple times, flipping it back and forth, and eventually that canvas will be pretty much gone. If there's a little bit left over, it's not the end of the world. The glaze will cover most of it up, but you don't want it, too pronounced or it gets a little distracting. Alright, so there is the beginnings. And what I'm going to try to make here, there's two different things that you could make. You could make this darted cup, which I'll finish this one by putting a bottom on. And then this is just without the darts, I started with this. All right, so that's just a really just straightforward round cup. And I'll be asking you guys to make one of each. All right. So what we'll do here is you have your cardboard tube in your kit, and you're going to want to get a piece of newspaper or craft paper or even notebook paper, something as a barrier between the cardboard and the tube. And then I'm going to put a little piece of tape on it. You don't want this on super tight, just that's a little too loose. If it's on too tight, it won't slide off. So it should slide a little bit like that. And you'll see the whole purpose of that. So I know that I want this cup to be about, I'm gonna make it about 4 inches. This edge is pretty straight. This edge is pretty not as straight as I'd like it. So I'm just gonna make a 4-inch mark there, a 4-inch mark there, and I'll use this stick as a straight edge. Make a cut. And then I think this will be my top, so I'm just gonna soften that edge with a sponge. And then I know that this has to be, because I've done the calculations ahead of time, about 11 inches, okay? And I'll show you, I'm just gonna make it about a foot. So if you take like the beginning of that paper and you roll it, get these out of the way. All right, and you roll it like that. You know, I'm going to know that it's got to be roughly that long, but if you take into account for I just squish that, the thickness of the clay, it's going to be longer. So I'm doing it with no thickness of the clay. If you add a 1/4 inch, it's going to be longer. It's not going to be the same diameter as this. So you have to take that in consideration. So it's going to need to be probably a 1/2 inch longer. So that's why I made it that, foot. That's the outside. I'm going to make this the inside. This is the top. This is the bottom. So I'm going to just roll the clay like that and just let it overlap slightly. I'm going to take my straight edge cut through both layers and then let it overlap just slightly like that. Alright, and then I'm just gonna, you don't have to, when the clay's this wet, don't worry about slipping and scoring and adding water. You just don't have to do that. So I'm just gonna push that to seal it. I tend to like to leave a little bit of a seam. So I'm just going to keep pushing that until it'll make a nice connection and it'll maintain a little seam. I think it looks worse if you tried to hide that seam. You can soften that up so it's not sharp, but I'm going to leave that little seam because I think it looks pretty nice. And it'll make it pretty flat on the inside. Alright, so that is how you do that. And then you can take the paper If you want it really nice and round, like this one, you leave the paper on there and let it set up for a while. But since I'm going to be making the darted cup with this one, I'm going to take it out and it will distort it a bit, and that's okay with me. Alright? And then I'll take in that little bit of overlap. I'm not going to cut that, I'm just going to leave it. And I'll probably go back and finish up this top later. But right now, I'm just going to show you how to dart the bottom. And then we'll add a bottom to this one that I've already started. So here is the middle, where the seam is. So I'm going to make a little mark with my straight edge. Make a mark like that. Trying to make these distances kind of equal. Alright. And then I'm going to go back and cut these little triangle darts out. Don't make them too big. And then you can use this as a little pattern. Stick it to there. Like that. There's another video I'll put out there by an artist by the name of Liz Lott. It makes cups like this that are really, really nice. I think it's just nice to see different people doing these techniques. So what I'm trying to do here is why I'm showing two different cups is there's going to be one that's really kind of more crisp and round, and then there's going to be one that's a little more freeform and a little softer. Just going to grab a brush. The easiest way to do this is, again, you don't have to do a lot of slipping and scoring. I'm just going to dampen these seams up, a little bit of water. And then fold it over like that and give it a nice light pinch. And again, don't worry about those seams. That square edge will go away when you just give it a light pinch. And try not to overwork those. Again, a little dampening with the water, a little overlap, and then nice little pinch. So it's making it kind of this nice little soft, you know, it's almost like fabric or leather. You know, I think just emphasizing seams and the softness of clay is what I'm trying to do here. So that is how to make the form. This one is stiffened up quite a bit. All right, and I went ahead and cleaned up this rim a little bit by pinching it and flaring it out a bit. I like this, you know, seam. I try not to hide any of those. Same with them down here. This is a little, it could be a little flatter. But when I go to put this bottom on, I don't want it to be really floppy and wet. You can't put it on like right after you make it. This has got to stiffen up, but yet still be nice and pretty soft. So I'm just going to take my sponge, I'm going to clean up this rim a little bit here. Okay, and then the scrap I have down here is pretty soft. So ideally when you put two slabs together, they should be kind of close in dryness. So this is a lot wetter than this. Ideally, what I would rather have you do is roll a little slab and just let it sit for a half hour before you put it on. If you don't, if you put it on really wet like this, you can get away with it. But what you'll need to do is dry it really slow, you know. And if this is way too dry, it won't stay on. It'll crack as it dries and pull away from the pot. If it's still flexible, you can get away with it just fine. So as long as this clay is pretty flexible, you should be okay. If you're just not in a situation where you can't do it. But don't put it on when it's, you know, bone dry or too dry. You'll find out after it dries, when it falls off, that that wasn't the right thing to do. Sometimes I'll take, actually, just peel, they just kind of pinch this and curl it back a little bit. Just make a little bit better connection. Now you for sure have to slip and score this because you're going on to kind of stiffer clay, otherwise it'll never stick. You know, if you're finding things falling apart, cracking, those are all due to, you know, just not paying attention to the dryness of your clay and that sort of thing, and not slipping and scoring properly. So I'm just going to, I leave that extra on there like that. And then trim it back. That's really the easiest way to do this, rather than trying to trace it and then cut it. In my opinion, this is really the best way to do it. And then I'll go back and trim it. Like that. Again, you'll know every time you watch me do a demo, especially with slabs, that I really like just to leave seams. And then you make a little concaved bottom like that, and then it'll sit flatter. Alright, and then we can go ahead and make a handle for that, which we'll do in another video. For this round one, you know, it's the same procedure. I just put a larger slab on the bottom, okay? I'm just going to do that really quickly. Look at all these little scraps. I don't have a big enough slab. So I'm going to roll one out using some of these scraps. Really quick to just make a little slab here. You'll see that this rolling pin does have a little bit of a finish on it, and it likes to stick once in a while. Once they get older, they start wearing off. If you got one from Target or whatever, I'm sure yours may have the same problems. Smoothing it out. I would do the same on this side, but I'm just, for demo's sake, let's do this. Let's get this slipped and scored. A little water down on here. Just give it a little wiggle like that, release it, and then we're going to take the knife tool and cut it back. Actually, it doesn't hurt to make the bottoms just a touch thicker than the rest of the cup. It's just easier to make those stay on. See how I just kind of round it off with my palm like that? I don't bother worrying about that seam right now. If you sit and go over it with a rib and try to smooth it, it ends up looking sometimes worse. You can see in this one I did try to clean up and hide the seam. I don't think it looks as nice, and I did that purposely because if you ask me, that nice little seam to me looks a little better. Okay? Get a shot of these two. And that's my cup video. Thanks a lot.